So the key for us has always been on just experimenting and iterating. And, a lot of the time with UA, experiments are going to fail and you just have to be totally fine with that.
Yeah. You've said a couple times as super fans, right? And the most obvious answer to the question of how do you build super fans?
I would say that, obviously you want to build a great product. That is totally correct. And that's what I noticed on my days at Atlassian as well too. We built a freaking incredible product that people loved and they became super fans.
What's up, Rosie? How you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Hey, doing good. Where are you at right now?
I am located in Ontario, Canada.
Good. I'm thinking what you did with Magical. If I understand the story correctly, too, y'all bought Text Expander.
Yeah.
Right. And then you kind of rebranded it, and then kind of, I would say, did your own thing with it. Right. And that's what I want to talk about. I was like, what the thinking behind that? Like, why did you not just build something from scratch? Why did you, the obvious answer is, well, distribution. They already had some users. And by the way, I was like an OG Text Expander user, like OG outreach. We would in the early days, things were crazy. Everyone was answering support tickets. And I was like, I need something to say the same response over and over with a hotkey. Right. And I was probably like your number one user for a while. And then I stopped using it and then I couldn't find it anymore. And then I learned it was Magical. And or else they were like, oh, there's this Magical thing, which is the same thing. So yeah, I just want to kind of go through the story there. Yeah, it would be amazing. Yeah.
Let me dive right into it. So maybe what I can just do is actually first set the context of Magical sort of origin story and how that rolled into, what we kind of did, which was more or less like a user acquisition play that I think was really, really intelligent. And so backing up a little bit, Magical is a SaaS productivity app that helps you save time from mundane, soul-crushing tasks. I actually absolutely love saying that line.
It has a ring to it. Yeah.
Emotions and feelings. Anyway, founded in 2020. And four of us co-founders, and really the idea came from the fact that Harpal, our CEO, had started a recruiting tech company years and years ago and ended up getting acquired by LinkedIn. So had a really successful outcome. But he found as a founder, a lot of his work was this mundane rote work that you're a founder as well too. You probably have done this all time. You're spending a lot of your time sourcing and recruiting because there is no recruiter. You're spending your time doing manual sales outreaches, personalizing your emails, doing follow-ups. You're spending your time filling in your CRM if you're lucky enough to have a CRM because you've scaled. And so you're all time doing this rote work. And that was kind of the origin story of Magical, is that despite all these other point tools on the market, there isn't something that really solves for all of this in a very easy way, especially for the most non-technical users. And so when Harpal sold his company over to LinkedIn, he actually observed the recruiters there, the sales folks there. He was like, oh, they must be doing this in a better way, but they really weren't. And so, he was an EIR over at Bain, and the idea of Magical really spun on, which was, what if I could have an app that could follow you along and start to sort of suggest these automations for you while you're actually doing work. And you can use it in a myriad of different ways, whether it's messaging, data entry, filling in spreadsheets or doing prospecting work, et cetera. And so the idea of Magical was actually born from that. And the way Harpal knew that it was the best idea was he built an early prototype. He gave it to a couple of the admin folks over at Bain. And by the end of the day, all of them came up and gave him a massive hug because they were like, you just saved us so much time. And so he was like, okay, I'm onto something. So that's the origin story of Magical. And, the team of us then came together. We were all really, really excited by it. And your question here was really around build versus buy. And how did we actually make that decision to then just go out and acquire an app? And we did this really in our very early days. And largely where this came from was one of the features of Magical was always going to be on sending messages and doing some basic levels of text expansion. So, text expansion, simplest form, it's you have, BRB that you code and it'll expand to be right back. That is the most basic way. That was always going to be one of the basic features of Magical. And obviously we do so much more than that. We will help personalize your messages, autofill them. We use AI to customize and drop the perfect template. We help you fill your CRM, by suggesting autofill. So we do way more than just text expansion, but text expansion was one of our first few features. And it's a pretty sticky feature. And we had already built the text expansion in our app in the early days when we first started Magical. But one of the things to our early teams thinking and credit was like we should be audacious and set big goals as it relates to what's the most important thing for us. And as an early stage startup, as you probably know this as well too, distribution is like very top of mind for every founder. It's like, how do I go from 0 to 1 really, really quickly? And so for us, we set a pretty audacious goal. We were like, we should grow this to like at least 100,000 users in the next like quarter. And so then when you're thinking through an audacious goal like that, you're like, I have 0 users today. How am I going to get to like 100,000 in a quarter? You start to get really, really creative. And one of the things that we decided to do was, why not put an acquisition on the table? So meaning instead of, going through the regular UA routes that other founders go through, which is like, building the growth loops in the app, which is, incredibly important, going out to where those users are, whether it's like support forums, et cetera, and like seeding Magical, spending money on performance marketing. Why don't we consider actually like buying the growth? It was kind of an audacious idea, but we ended up buying a app called Auto Text Expander. Really, all it did was basic text expansion. So it was just this one of the very basic features in Magical. We found the app on the Chrome Web Store, got it connected to the founder as he happened to be in Harpal's network. And it isn't for the faint of heart. It took a while to actually get that deal over the line, but overnight we added at least like 50 to 60,000 users just through that.
Wow. And they weren't like monetizing, I don't think, or at least I don't think so. When I was using it, I was pretty much free, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They were not monetizing at all. And like, again, like if you looked at the app, and this is no offense to the developer of the app because he's a phenomenal person, but like the app was really basic. Like you probably remember this as well too because it sounds like you used it, but like you're thinking of like a very basic web page with like an input box where you can add in your text expander statement. So it was Times New Roman font. Like it was really like a basic app, but it did have tens of thousands of users, and that was largely because it still fulfilled a function, a very basic function that was still very useful. And for us, we were like, well, this is going to be one of the functions of our app anyway, so why not go out and actually acquire those users?
So they weren't monetizing, so like basically 0 revenue. So how'd you think about like how you were going to acquire this company? Was it for shares in Magical? Was it monetarily? And you don't have to share all the insider details, but how did you think about that? Right. Cause I think, we did something similar at Taplio, right? We basically, looked at a couple extensions called Twimix and some extensions that like related to our product, and they didn't have really any revenue, right? Free extensions. And we were like, well, this would be great as our distribution flywheel here. Let's use this. But I would love to hear from you how you thought about kind of doing that acquisition and what went into it. Cause I'm sure people are curious, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'd say that, without disclosing like, the information on like the mechanics of the deal and stuff, I'd say that in large part, when you're doing an acquisition, and I'm thinking about my time at Atlassian when we work on deals and you have all the information in the world and you have a corp dev team. And like, I had done some of this in my past life as well too, where there was a lot of information at your disposal where you can make a really educated guess on what a valuation price should be and like how much you should be paying and stuff like that. And they're complex deals. In this case, like you don't have a lot of information. We didn't have any data on like the users. Like these could be folks that are in super low willingness to pay regions as an example. Like they'd be located in which case like it's, how much is that really worth, right? And so, in this case, you are guessing in a lot of ways. And I think there's interesting ways that you can make it a little bit more educated. Like you can look at Chrome Store reviews as an example, or you can try to do, if the founder is willing to give up information. In this case, they did not have any analytics data, but they did have some very basic Google Analytics data. Like that actually started to give us some telemetry on like the region of where some of these users could be located. And so, you have to obviously invest in some sleuthing, Reddit forums, reviews, et cetera, to actually like give yourself a sense of, what this could actually be worth. But just to be completely candid with you, we weren't sure if it was worth 0 or if it was worth substantial. And that's
Yeah.
kind of that's kind of like the when you're talking about being a founder in general, right? Like it's about taking
Hmm.
swings, and so you're going to miss, but you have to be
Yeah.
comfortable
Yeah.
with misses. So I would say that, like, for anyone that's considering doing something like this, is you're not going to have a ton of information unless you're very lucky. Uh, and in case
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of information, you just have to be willing to determine, like, how much are you willing to really lose on here, and is the swing actually worth it if you do manage to kind of hit a home run or not. In our case, I
Yeah.
don't know if we necessarily like hit a home run per se, but we actually did get a user base that gave us at least like that first leg up. And that user base is a fraction of how big our user base actually is today, but it did give us the momentum to kind of get started. And I think that was the important piece for us.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting when you say like the app was so simple and had 60,000 users, right, or 50 to 60, however many it was, and it it always brings up this point that I always try to tell to friends who are like, I want to build the next SpaceX and I want to build the next thing, and I'm like, dude, you don't need to do that. Like, like honestly, some of the best ideas start as the most simple things, right? Like an auto text expander hotkey, boom, expands your text into whatever BRB, be right back, but for desktop, right? Like, and you can do that on your iPhone, right? You can like set your own hotkeys and all that. But it's just so interesting how some of these best ideas are like just the smallest things. Uh, and so today for Magical, I would still say like the main use case I have is the text expander, right? And I know that y'all have a million other things to do, but like I just use that one use case and I'm like, boom, like that's what I use Magical for. It's my auto text expander, And so for you, like I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably a common with a lot of people is like the most number one use thing is the auto text expander. And you're probably trying to expand other use cases and do all that. So for you, I'm sure a question that you think about is like, do we double down on just being the text expander or do we double down on all these other use cases? And this is a question I always ask myself too, right? And so like, how do you think about that? Because you are the strategy master as well, Rosie, having ran strategy at Atlassian. So
Yeah, I'd say that. So it's actually surprising when we do look at the data, like we do have a myriad of use cases. So I think whenever we talk to folks that are just using us for text expansion, like they're like, I
yeah,
just love it for the text expansion. But when we speak to people that are using us for some of the AI features, they're like, I just use it for the AI features. Or we speak to people that are using us to like fill in forms and spreadsheets. They're like, I couldn't live without this. So I think it is actually pretty distributed. Text expansion is
yeah,
obviously something that is so easy because everyone sends a Calendly link, everyone sends a Zoom link, and so everyone can use it. And so the TAM for that is just like large. But I'd say that our absolute best customers and use cases are the ones where there is that cross pollination and they're using us for more than just one thing, because then they're extracting the maximum value out
yeah,
of Magical. And so when we think about like double downing on one thing, I don't think that's ever been part of our vision. Like our vision has always been like we want to automate mundane tasks for our users, and automation is obviously like a very loaded term, but if
yeah,
I were to break down the simplest concept, it's like basically like we want to do more than one thing for our customers. And ideally those things can be paired. And so if we think about like sales, for example, they can leverage Magical to send their Calendly link, which is like a very basic use case in the form of text expansion. But what we see from our sales users who are really like optimizing Magical is they're using Magical to autofill messages from LinkedIn to send a very personal like request or email. And then we have this other use case of sales folks that are using Magical to fill in the CRM directly from like LinkedIn, and so that's another example of a use case that
yeah,
we're tapping into. And the more of these use cases that we can unlock from our users, and our users are gems, they always like provide the best feedback on like, hey, we'd love Magical to do this next, or you've completed this part of the workflow for me, like we'd love for you to do this next thing. That's where we get really, really excited, because ultimately speaking, if we can build in features that can solve more of these use cases for our customers, the more that we know that we're obviously
yeah.
extracting as much value as possible.
In today, so a couple of things. One, this sounds like you got a little bit of Atlassian DNA in you because they have every product known to man. Right? Every time I go on Atlassian, there's a new product. I'm like, docs, like this, like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's everything, right? Which is awesome. So it sounds like you kind of got some
Well,
strategy there from that.
yeah, I'd say that like definitely from my time at Atlassian,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a big component of our success was land and expand. And that could be land and expand in terms of users. So meaning like, you know, the way that Magical typically spreads is very similar to Atlassian, where someone will download the product, they get hooked, and then they share us with their team and then to, you know, their department. Then it goes cross department. Sometimes it ends up company wide, which is like amazing. And so we talked about land and expand in that. You know, from that perspective, but land and expand also meant like you land in Jira or in Trello, and you expand to other Atlassian use cases and products as well too. And those, you know, those users were also ultimately like very, very sticky as well too, because they're, you know, they're leveraging you for more than one thing. And so I think it is really important that you do have like a land and expand model for use cases as well too. And, you know, Magical does have that in various ways. Some people will land on us for text expansion. Others will land on us because they heard from their teammate that like filling in the CRM was just so much more easier using Magical. And then they discover the text expansion. That's actually been something that's been happening a lot more recently, which is really, really exciting. But, you know, those users are ultimately going to be, you know, just extracting more value from the platform and will stick around longer.
Yeah. And I mean, you realize how important distribution is, right? And like, I mean, y'all are at what, 400K users? I saw on the Chrome store or something like that, like 400K, it says like 400K plus or something. I'm sure you have an exact number, but that's wild. Like, that's insane. That is a lot of users, like over 400K. What's really been the distribution strategy? Like, you know, and what has been and what have you experimented with?
Yeah.
Right. I'd love to hear that stuff and see kind of where you've won and then where you failed in experiments, because I'm sure you guys have tried a million different things.
Yeah. This is like a huge hat tip to our marketing team. And just in the level of experimentation that they followed through with, along with, you know, we have a growth product team at Magical as well too, and huge hat tip to them as well. I think both of these teams combined have really invested quite a bit of time in figuring out different, you know, avenues for getting users to try the product. And generally speaking, I think what we tend to do is we experiment, just kind of like how you called out. Like there is no shortage of experimentation at Magical. I can give you like a quick example of this, which is like, you know, when our head of marketing first joined Magical, you know, she had kind of had this mandate already of like, hey, I want to experiment with different channels, figure out what sticks. And then if it sticks and the ROI makes sense, let's hire for it. And a good early learning that we had was on influencer marketing. Which, you know, within her first few months, we hired like a contract influencer marketer who kind of came in, built relationships with other influencers who were posting on our behalf. We were also testing our own organic content. We just saw it sticking and working, and specifically like, you know, on TikTok. And the mechanics of it actually just worked really well for us when we saw like the ROI. And that was like a very successful experiment. And in the end, what that led to was hiring a full-time influencer marketer on our team. You know, who probably reached out to you and has also worked with other influencers as well too. And so the key for us has always been on just, you know, just experimenting and iterating. And, you know, a lot of the time with UA, experiments are going to fail, and you just have to be totally fine with that. You're not going to win everything. And if you are winning everything, something's, you know, something's wrong. Maybe they're not retaining, like these users aren't retaining, as an example. But no, I think what we've done a really nice job at is, we pick a couple of things that we want to experiment with every quarter. We go out and we test them. We try to back into the ROI, even if it's super fuzzy. Like TikTok does not have the best ROI math because it's hard to track, given that, you know, Magical doesn't have a mobile component. A lot of people are, you know, watching on mobile. So it is hard to attribute back, but we can take best guesses on like how many users we got from TikTok and like what the ROI of these users actually is. And, you know, I'd say that like, you know, my skill set comes into play with data analysis. Like that's something I took from my days at Atlassian, and I brought over to Magical as well too. And so, you know, oftentimes I'll be looking at like retention charts and seeing like which users are actually sticking around and from what channels, et cetera. And, you know, passing those learnings onto our marketing and our growth team so that we know like, yeah, cool, we generated a lot of users from this one channel, but did they stick like a couple of weeks later? Because that's also an important part of the equation. If we're just acquiring users that aren't retaining, then, you know, obviously it's a poor channel. That's kind of the methodology that we've kind of used, and I'll say it's been like surprisingly like successful for us. When I say surprising, is like it's a lot of work that kind of goes into it because again the failure rate is so high. But once you find a channel that actually works, it's probably one of the most exciting things.
So are y'all still doing TikTok then?
Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
yeah. We do. We
yeah.
have, maybe less so specifically on when I say less so on TikTok, like TikTok is still like one of the channels that we're going after on social, but we've now expanded as well too, where we'll look at like LinkedIn, and we'll also look at like YouTube as an example. And so we've actually like probably just added more breadth there,
Yeah.
just like specifically on TikTok.
And then like so this is a question a lot of people have right now, especially in B2B, right? Which is like, how do you do this influencer marketing? Right. And I think it's becoming a hot topic, but people are like trying to like, even me, I'm like, how, right? Even being one, I'm like, how do you like scale this? Like being in that kind of crowd on LinkedIn with like, a good following or whatever. And so it sounds like you have someone recruiting influencers full time and basically having them post in that video on TikTok is, hey, I found this crazy app, it does this thing. And so someone full time is just recruiting all these people, having them make like one video a week or two videos a week. Like what are the mechanics like, Rosie?
Yeah.
And I know this is kind of in the weeds and maybe a little, you don't deal with this specifically, but I would personally love to know this
Yeah.
and
No,
how you do that.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm absolutely not the person that does this on a daily basis. And she's amazing. So I'm going to paraphrase. As much as possible.
That works too.
I would say that, no, I'd say that the way we started this was really, really small potato scale, which was, we'd reach out to influencers directly on, TikTok. We just DM them and we'd say, hey, look, it looks like you have really interesting content here. Perhaps in the space that we think would be, complementary to Magical. Check out Magical and tell us if you're interested. And, some of them would reply, some of them wouldn't. We'd negotiate deals with some of them. And then we track the successes accordingly. And how this is scaled out over time is, now there are actual like influencer platforms that are available that let you connect with creators, and it makes the whole process so much more seamless because you can imagine that our influencer marketer was spending a lot of her time actually like, negotiating these deals, like, forcing the influencers. That's really time consuming. So working on an actual platform makes it that much more seamless. What we've also done is like, Magical actually benefits a lot because we have a lot of organic traction as well too. Like word of mouth is one of our biggest drivers of user acquisition, and continues to be since our founding. It still is today.
That's awesome.
Referrals and word of mouth. And so, oftentimes, the best influencers are the ones that, are actually just posting naturally and organically on behalf of Magical. And we're not even paying them to do so. We'll just step on LinkedIn and we'll just see, posts go out that we've never, had an interaction with. And I'd say that actually happens fairly often. And we're obviously very fortunate to actually have that. And in those cases, it's really awesome because we can build relationships with those folks as well too.
Yeah.
Super users are obviously the ones that are, such as yourself. You mentioned that you use Magical all the time, which I'm really excited about. But like, super users that are actually just organically going out and like they're actually posting on your behalf are some of the best ones because the post is authentic, and they're willing to do this, not for any payment, but just because it's such a game changer of an app, and they're just so excited to tell folks about it. But going back to specifically on like paid influencer, I'd say that having an influencer platform is like the way to scale it out. Like one big learning that we've had is like, we like to review the content before it goes out, just to make sure that it meets like, our brand principles and all that stuff. And we're also continuously learning as well too. Like we're trying to learn from the best of breed SaaS companies that have actually like, built a real program around this. Obviously Magical is still like early stage here.
Yeah, like Notion. I think Notion also was a big one on TikTok as well, and I see them everywhere on TikTok, which is so funny because like the most unexpected channel, right? Like where
I spoke to the folks over at Notion, and I think one of the triggers to know whether influencer is good for you is if you happen to notice that it's happening organically without you even paying for folks to actually go on. So I think what happened with Notion is they actually did not even invest in influencer. People were just posting organically on TikTok. And then they were like, ooh, let's light fire to this and start a program. And I'd say that was very similar to Magical in that the reason why we actually had a belief that this could potentially work is because we have so many super fans that go on LinkedIn or on TikTok or on YouTube, and they just talk about Magical organically, without, like I said, without any payment. And that's what kind of gave us the goals to say like, hey, this actually could be something because we already have an audience of folks that like love us, and they're willing to go out of their way. And so, what our head of marketing always says, which I love, is like, if you have channels that are already organically working, just like add fire to it. And, that's what we try to do with influencers.
Yeah. And I think what y'all have done is like, you've said a couple of times as super fans, right? And it's so true. And the most obvious answer to the question of how do you build super fans, right, is build a good product. Like that's, would you add anything to that? Cause that's kind of what I've found is like, just focus on building an awesome freaking product that people want to use every day.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's such basic advice. I used to hate when other founders would tell me this. They were like,
yeah.
Because it's like,
it's like,
obvious.
Okay, duh, that's what I'm doing, dude. Yeah.
So I would say that, obviously you want to build a great product. That is like totally correct. And like, that's what I noticed on my days at Atlassian as well, too. We built like a freaking incredible product that people loved and they became super fans. But I would say that the whole notion of build it and they will come is actually totally incorrect in, from a building perspective. And what I basically mean by that is like, I think oftentimes the mistake that founders make is like thinking that if they build a great product, they will come. And getting that distribution actually does matter because you do need some momentum to kind of get you off. Because if you build a great product, but you have done zero to get it out into the market, and you haven't really invested there, then people will not flock to it because they don't know about it. So I think you do actually have to invest a little bit upfront to, not a little bit, it's like a lot of your time should be spent thinking about distribution. How do I get this into the hands of my ICP as quickly as possible? And, start that conversation, start to get those feedback loops. And there's like a myriad of ways that you could potentially do it. But like, in our case, what we have found is built an awesome product. We were able to get it out into the market. People do love it. And, that's why word of mouth and referrals is still like our strongest, one of our strongest acquisition channels is because people really, really enjoy using it. But, I speak to founders all the time who build really, really awesome products. I'm like, oh, holy shit, this is kick ass. But like, you can't find it. Or like, like it's
where is it?
Where is it? Like, or like, you don't know enough people that have used it. They haven't gotten to the hands of their ICP. And so, cases, you're not going to get like that referral channel to happen, sort of organically.
Yeah, it's definitely feels twofold, right? Which is like, hey, like you need to build that kick-ass product, but also you need to build a kick-ass distribution system. And if you can do both of those, then I think you're rocking, right? Like 100%. That's where you're rocking, and that's when word of mouth is also very much correlated with awesome product, right? Like something awesome, word of mouth, which is definitely some of the best marketing I think like that you can do, because if your friend next to you is like, hey, I'm using this awesome thing. That's what happened with Auto Text Expander. It was like, I told the whole team, I was like, they're like, oh, how do you like get back to people so quickly? And I'm like, dude, all the questions are the same. So I just literally typed this hotkey and I got my answer. And they're like, oh, cool. Like I'm going to do that. Right. And so that's definitely one, especially in the workplace. It would actually, a thought that just came in my head is like how that's word of mouth has changed since people have not been in the office as much, like I wonder if you have data on that where like that's interesting, right? Because in the office, you're seeing what are people doing? What are they using? What are they not? And then now that it's remote, like maybe you put it in your Slack channel, maybe you just kind of keep it to yourself. Like,
it's a great question. I often hear specifically for Magical. And yeah, you're totally right. Like back, when I was in the office, it was water cooler conversations where it's like, oh, check out this app. This app is awesome. Or you just be peering over someone's computer. You're like, what are you using? And like, you find out about things. And now that we're remote, that dramatically shifts. But maybe not so, in the sense that like where we find, how Magical is actually shared. Like oftentimes when we speak to our super fans is like, oh, I shared in a Slack channel, or like, I brought it up with my manager and like we shared it at a training or we did a lunch and learn on Magical. So I think there's still like avenues to kind of get the product out there. I think it's just like sort of adapted to this like virtual world. Like I'd say like even at Magical, like the way we share cool apps with each other is like through Slack. Like someone will just post like, hey, I started using this awesome app and like you need to check it out. So I'd say that that's kind of like what we've seen qualitatively. I don't really have any data on like, this is how things have been shared previously versus now. But, generally that's like what we hear from our users is like Slack or like lunch and learns or, just even trainings. It's like where this naturally.
Yeah. Trainings.
How did you, I'm curious, like, how did you mentioned you shared Magical with folks and this was maybe like when you were in person, but like even now, if you're sharing Magical, like, is it through Slack or?
Honestly, I'm trying to think of the last time I shared it.
It's this podcast.
This podcast. Yeah. What are you talking about, Rosie? It's this podcast. I'm trying to think of the last time I shared it. I think it was, holy crap. I can't remember, but you know what I think is an underrated, like an amazing channel for y'all is like support teams. And I'm sure you already know this, but like more than even salespeople, like owning support teams, because like they're answering the same questions over and over and over again. Like I doubt they ever get new questions unless it's like a bug after, release to prod or whatever. So like, I think that's how I discovered. I was helping run our customer success team at Outreach. And I was like, oh, guys, y'all use this because it's going to make you that much faster with your tickets and your answers and until we get the product fixed and all that stuff. So, I believe that was going back. That was the main way I would share it. Right. Is like when I was like, okay, I want to help these people be more productive. And so I was like, don't answer the same thing over and over and over and over. Just use this. Right. So that was, I think, the main way that I would share it, right, was in that use case. Now, today, a lot of my questions are different, obviously, as a founder. So like, back and forth, I've automated my like cold emails and that's a whole different conversation. But, today what I'm mostly using it for is my calendar link. I would say definitely calendar link, Zoom link.
We got to give you one personalized messages.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a huge unlock. All founders I talk to that use Magical for like autofilling personalized messages, like love it for that reason.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, I'll have to try that. I'm gonna become a pro after this. I told you on that too. So, but yeah, Rosie. Next question I have for you is, okay, we've talked about distribution. We talked about what are some other experiments that worked for you? Would you say that you mentioned the TikTok influencers, that's a whole function that you even have right now, for recruiting people there, using platforms to do that. But what's some other stuff, related to a Chrome extension that people can do to like grow it, right? That you found?
This is going to sound really silly, but it actually worked for us was, some level of social proofing the app. And what I mean by social proofing is like more often than not, like even looking at like reviews is the way that people actually determine whether or not they wanted to like download the app. And so the more 5-star reviews or high-star reviews you actually have. And so with Magical, we have just really made it a point. Like we organically get a lot of 5-star reviews, which is amazing. So we're very, very fortunate there. But we've actually made it a point where if someone leaves, a review that is below 5 stars is like, to this day, one of our co-founders, God bless him for doing this, he like responds to one of those reviews almost like immediately and will.
Wow.
Yes. It's to this day. It's like one of those, those things that they tell you, like do the unscalable things in the beginning and then grow out of it. Like this is one of those unscalable things that we have not grown out of. And it's hilarious, but it works. Our review and we're like immediately like on it. And it's a big kudos to my co-founder who will actually just respond to these and actually like jump on a call or will like, respond to help, respond or resolve via email to help fix their issue. And, oftentimes they go out and they change their review from like 1 to 5 stars. And then they'll actually like organically go out and talk about us. And so we've seen this happen before where like people will post about like, wow, Magical's like customer service is amazing because, they resolved my issue almost like immediately. And a founder actually called me to resolve it. So I'd say that like, that's another sort of weird avenue where like I think social proofing has really worked in our favor. There's other things as well too that are a little bit more traditional. That's why I haven't brought them up. Like we have a blog as an example, but like I know another like SaaS companies have blogs. So I'm trying to avoid the ones that are like maybe the typical growth channels that other companies have sort of exploited. But social proofing has actually worked really well, and it's created a lot of goodwill for us. That's kind of like put fire on some of the word of mouth of Magical.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the reviews right now, and it says 3.3K ratings, so 3,300 ratings or reviews, about 4.6 star average, which is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Out of 3.3, which is a huge sample size. And every one of these is like, oh my gosh, saves me so much time. And like the value is just so clear, right? It's like save time. Everyone's like, save time, save time, save time, save time. Which is just amazing. So that's awesome to see. And with these, you can post them all over your site, link to them, use them as social proof, right? Like this is crazy. Like the amount of reviews you have.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can do so much. You can do so much with that, and then that's like part of the thing as well too. Is like when you even just think about other apps that you've downloaded in the past, specifically even from like where reviews are very readily available. You do look at reviews. Like it's just very natural for people to look at reviews just to see what they're themselves into. And so I think Magical's done a really nice job there.
Yeah, and these are like true. And going into this topic, the reviews is like you can almost trust these Chrome reviews a little bit more. I feel like. Because if you look at like, and again, G2 Crowd and these other sites, you knew I was going with this one. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if I can believe G2 Crowd anymore. Right. And like these sites, just because, I've done it in the past. I know other companies done it in the past where they offer a gift card to say, hey, give 5 stars or whatever. Right. And so it's like, you kind of am like, you're like, okay, are these all gift card reviews or are these like real reviews? So whereas these Chrome reviews, people are brutally honest. Like we had a Chrome review in the past and I'm like, luckily we still have good reviews, but they're honest. Like they're not.
And, no one's getting a gift card for Chrome store.
No one's like, everyone's just like, and God bless them for taking the time to do it, whether it's 5 stars or 1 star. Cause I've never written a Chrome review myself. I don't know if you have, but maybe I'll do a Magical one for y'all.
Thank you. That'd be great.
But like, holy crap. I think definitely this Chrome store play really gives you a good sense of if it's a good product or not. And you might have more ratings than any other one. On here.
No, I think we do. And I think like the Chrome store is also really, really awesome. And speaking on distribution, like I think the Chrome store is really, really awesome because it is like the number one browser, right? So you automatically get distribution just by being on Chrome, like building on Chrome, right? It makes your app more discoverable. So people are typing in keywords, productivity apps as an example or whatever, they can find Magical. So people that actually like people do browse the Chrome web store for apps. And so we do find that as like a channel for us as well too. Is people that are just browsing, they'll come in through search within the Chrome web store and they'll just click on Magical and download us directly from there. So there is obviously pros and cons on building on someone else's backyard, but we do see it as like a core benefit for us in distribution.
What percent, because we're about to launch a Chrome extension for video and AI video and all that fun stuff, and to distribute pages, right? And so what percentage of users would you say come through like on a monthly or quarterly basis, right? Through like the Chrome store search?
It's a really good question. I actually don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but what I can tell you is like when we were looking at these numbers maybe about a year ago is actually like fairly low, and over time it's actually increased. And I think that's largely just because we've ranked for more keywords within the Chrome web store. So like keywords like productivity or like AI tools as an example that people are searching for. In the same way that like, if you were to search like video recorder, Loom would probably come up to the top. And someone that's looking for a video recorder is going to download Loom. Or if you're looking for like grammar checker, like Grammarly will probably come to the top. So there's been, over time through natural SEO goodwill that we've kind of created, we're starting to rank for more words. And so as a result, we have seen it increase. I just don't know what the exact percentage is. It's not like a massive percentage by any means, but it's meaningful enough that we're like, we notice it.
Yeah.
So, like it's noticeable.
Yeah.
It's become a more noticeable percentage over time, if that's helpful at all.
Yeah, no, that is because you always wonder. I always have said, like, if you want to build something, build a Chrome extension, because it's just like it's just always there.
Totally.
It's always there. It's like Outreach. We did that. I know Apollo.io in the same world is doing that. And it's just kind of right up front, and you can like kind of put it, for lack of a better term, it can always be in people's faces. Like you can like hack your like getting attention for your app, like in that way once they download it, so
Really?
Super interesting. Well, Rosie, this has been amazing. Thank you for jumping on. This has been super great. Where can people find you? LinkedIn, where's the best place?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Rosie Chopra. They can also email me directly at rosie@getmagical.com. If you have any feedback on Magical, if you love the app, reach out to me. We're also always hiring. We're hiring for now. Engineering, biz ops, even within like our marketing team as well too. So if you're interested in a role, reach out to me as well too. Really appreciate the time today, Andy. This was like so awesome. So great getting to know a Magical user and fellow founder. And really excited to be on your show.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosie. This has been awesome. And we'll have some collab stuff coming out soon. So we're going to do some fun stuff, which is
nice. I love it.
We'll do some, our whole brand is like Mexican Day of the Dead, right? I'm Mexican. I know I don't look Mexican by any means. But yeah, people look at me like, I thought you were Swedish or something,
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to do some, we're launching a thing called Taco Template Tuesday.
Love it.
So we're going to have a new template every Tuesday. Magical's on the 13th, I believe, of February. So we're doing a template together. So it's going to be freaking awesome. Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Can't wait. So, I am so excited. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, well, Rosie. Well, hey, I'll see you soon. If you ever need anything, you know where to find me. So
totally.
we'll chat soon.
Great. Thank you. Bye.